Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss the feature news for today, that is 23rd of December 2021. Today's feature news is on data protection regime in India. Before we begin the conversation, let me welcome all the participants here who are watching live. Vibani, Netra, Hima, Ashish, good evening to you. Good evening Pooja. Good evening Amlan. And we do have Sam, good evening to you as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this wait. And there is something that Pooja mentioned. Pooja is asking questions about how to be able to prepare notes. Just a short while, present a little while on your yourself on this platform. Take a week to just understand how we proceed, and slowly and steadily you will gain pace in being able to prepare notes as well. You will understand in a short while, in a few days, how we prepare notes, because in almost every day, every video, I keep repeating the ADEC principle through which we make notes. People have started to adopt this. This is a very good approach. And right now, if you go on to making notes, there will be pages and pages of it, because you will not be able to write everything that I am speaking. And it is not even important. More important is to understand, which I help you do. But what has to be produced in the examination is far shorter than what is explained, right? So that is the reason that Pooja, spend some time, a couple of, just 1 week, 5-6 days, and then you will be able to understand what is the smarter way we have evolved here, right? Good evening, Ravi. Good evening to you. So let's begin this conversation. Today's conversation is on data protection regime in our country, which is being curtailed and which is being managed well through the help of a legislation, a proposed legislation. This legislation will be active in our country if we go ahead with this particular enactment of this bill, this data protection bill. And it had been recommended to Joint Parliamentary Committee, a committee which was formed of the members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both, and they have also recommended certain changes in the original bill. In this context, we will understand what is the significance of data protection anywhere in the world, in India. What are the new approaches to the data protection, especially what the Joint Parliamentary Committee has said. What are the issues with data protection in India, and what is the way forward, right? So let us begin this conversation. Before anything, do you know whatever kind of transaction that we do anywhere, offline or online, we generate data through it, and this data is not processed. This is raw data, but it contains many kind of information. It contains some personal information. It could contain some sensitive personal information, and it could contain some critical personal information as well. See, personal information could be my gender. Personal information could be my work profile. Personal information could be anything that I relate with, and it does not speak about me in general. Another kind of data is sensitive data. Sensitive data is, for example, I have typed something on Facebook, and it speaks of my political inclination. It speaks of something that I would not like anybody else to record apart from my speaking it, right? So this becomes a little more sensitive. People can utilize this data to my benefit, against my benefit as well. Critical personal data, my bank account number, right? What is my salary? What is some certain things about my finances which nobody should be able to know about me, right? So there are various aspects of data which can be organized to form information, and it can lead to various kind of impacts. First issue is privacy. Why should I share my data with anybody else? Right now, we log on to Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hotstar, and there is a data recorded. They record humongous types of data. For example, what is the time of login? What is the duration of watch of a particular series? And it profiles the individual on the basis of the kind of data usage. What is the time we take in Uber? What is the distance that we travel? What are the times that we give a call to anybody else? This data can become a personal data. This can also become a non-personal data. So there is a segregation of the data usage. Non-personal data means this is not person specific, but This is giving an overall idea about some information about, for example, what is the time when people travel through cabs, what is the time when people order food, what is the time when they are jovial and they want to order food, order products online, right? What is the time when or what is the quantity in which they spend during the weekends? And this data can be exploited to our advantage or to our disadvantage. Data becomes the oil. Data becomes the new policy on which people are able to garner everything. I will like to give an example right now. YouTube gives, there's a YouTube manager with every account. Edukemy also has an account, and they give a complete analysis of which part of the world are people viewing this video from. So there is a data of if it is being viewed from USA, Middle East, Far East, or we have Australia, East Asia, or South America, or is it India? And in India also, what is the time when people are watching it, right? What is the number of subscribers that are increasing through this watch? So there is a lot of data which is of utility to people, and there is of less utility to people. The prime reason for data protection regime around the world is that, first, privacy. One individual's data should not be used without their consent. Data consent is very important. Including that, we should also understand many of the data agencies in the country, they are international, they are not national. Many of them have data servers located abroad, right? So data servers and data centers located abroad. So they are processing India's data, and India does not have sovereignty over its own data. So in this way, government says that you should establish data centers inside the country, or if it is sensitive data, you cannot even take it out without permission, without any exigency, any extreme condition. You should not be taking out specific kind of data from the country. So they will want to create a data protection authority, which is the one who is deciding everything in India, right, regarding data. This authority should ideally be working independent of the government. We will come to the issues of this data protection authority, but before that, some various aspects of data protection. So the point being, why do we even want the data to be saved? Cannot we have a regime when the data is forgotten? Right to be forgotten is another right which many countries exercise, right, in their country. In this context, there are various architectures that are used. They are not mentioned here, but I would like to mention them in the video. This is an incentive for you. Zero trust, zero access. Right? This is a very good trusted principle. When there is no trust, no data should be given to that particular place. Right? Not only for the user, but also for a website. If the website does not feel comfortable in accessing or in ensuring that it shares data with another database, it should not give access to that particular platform. It is prone to get hacked also. This is one. Not only that, there is a data minimization principle. Data minimization. What is the need? Example, what is the need for railway to know my office address, my personal address, or my gender? If it does not need, it should not be given that data. This is called as data minimization. What is the need for example, for mother dairy delivery services to know what is my gender, whether I am a male or am I a female? No, it does not need to know. Data minimization. These are the principles through which people can protect their data individually. In addition, there are a couple of more principles, important principles, like multiple factor authentication and least privilege principle. Least privilege principle. Through this least privilege principle, if at certain level of information, if certain level of information is not required at certain level, it should not be asked for. If at certain level this information is required, more information is required, it should be asked for. For example, while we are interacting on YouTube, I do not need to know a lot of things about you. I refrain from asking this, despite the fact that I really want to know which part of the country you are from. I do not ask that. So this is called as the least privilege principle. If I do not need to know, I should not be asking it, right? But if you are taking admission in a program in Edukemy, then we will want to know what is your graduation. Then we will also want to know what is the field you have done your graduation from. So least privilege principle. And the fourth important principle is called as the principle of multiple factor authentication, right? So even if I have shared my data with you, right, then every time, for example, you log on to Edukemy's website, it will always have an authentication based on your email address and your OTP as well on your phones, right? So two factors of authentication, your email address and your phone numbers. So these are some principles on which data protection can happen, right? These are apart from what we have mentioned here. So this data protection bill, when it went to JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee, it was only after the government drafted a bill. The government drafted the bill on the basis of Puttaswamy judgment 2017, which spoke of the right to privacy to everybody. Every individual should have right to privacy. Suppose many regimes of data protection, they did not offer these kind of data protection. For example, multiple factor authentication or the least privilege principle or data minimization, data localization. They did not follow all this. But now the world is getting into a digital mode. Because of Corona, it has only gotten accelerated, right? We have studied so many other supply chains of it. This is the reason that we need data protection in India. And this is the bill that is going to provide data protection in our country. It is based on the data protection acts around the world, around European Union as well. There, the data protection regime is called as General GPR, General Data Protection Regulations. There is quite a bit of similarity. There are some differences, right? So we will talk about this similarity and difference later. Before that, what is personal data? Personal data is something that identifies me as who I am, my age, my gender, the way I, my specific choices, the place I live in. So in sensitive data will also come the critical data. In sensitive data, in personal data will also come the sensitive data, and in personal data will also come the critical personal data, right? I have explained both of them, and this is what this personal data protection bill is about. This is not about the non-personal data protection. Non-personal data protection, non-personal data are the analysis. As I mentioned, it is the analysis of people without spotting an individual out of them, right? So this is about the group analysis. But the government has also said about the non-personal data that there should be a platform for all the, all such non-personal data to be shared with all the technologies, all the companies, so that everybody can utilize this kind of non-personal data. Right now, companies are collecting data and utilizing them for gaining competitive advantage. So the need for protection of data around the whole world is because of the growing data. India is creating huge amounts of data, myriads and myriads of data usage throughout the whole year. In fact, to the tune of terabytes, exabytes, right? So we have mega, giga, then we have tera, peta, exa, and then after that we have exa and zepta and whatnot. So this is to the power of 15 or 18. This is with power of 18, 10 to the power of 18 exabytes of data. 150 of them is what we create per year, India, and it is only growing with time. Not only that, if we look, data protection has become a global concern. We are following the suit of USA and Europe and trying to ensure that data is anonymous for individuals. It is also protected for individuals. Their data is not shared without their own consent, right? Dwindling consumer trust. This is something that people focus when there is higher, personal growth. So once people start looking at if they have clothes to wear, if they have a ceiling above their head, if they have something to eat, they will start caring more of friends. Once they have friends, when they have social media, when they have smartphones, they will start to look at things like this, where they feel a little untrustworthy when people are looking after or looking for their data. So this is one of the parts of socializing, right? Gaining consumer trust or dwindling consumer trust, right? We have so many fake accounts and bots because of this. Many attacks on governance processes, many attacks on online processes happen. And since the whole world is, the fourth industrial revolution is about data, therefore we have to ensure that the data protection of people is done. Otherwise it proliferates, otherwise it increases fake accounts of people. Imagine fake account for the prime minister of a particular country, right? So therefore we need data protection about people. Otherwise fake accounts will get created with their photographs, with their personal details. Imagine that, right? This also leads to deterioration of emotional and mental health of persons, right? Does it not? People have committed suicides because their personal data was put in the public space. Nobody was, people got offended, but nobody was criminalized because of this, right? Data security is a national issue for the country. It is, right? Because not only the personal data, but the governance data is also prone to get hacked. It is also prone to get into attacks. Look at the kind of security attacks on energy security, attacks on food security attack which was done in USA, energy security in Saudi Arabia, in USA, in India, and so much of data security, health security data from many of the companies in India, right? Good examples are Dr. Reddy's database was hacked. We have Airport Authority of, we have National Highway Authority of India data, NHAI data which was also hacked, airport. Then we have various other companies, Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation data was also hacked. Similarly, many other organizations like Air India data, right? Many other companies. What are the people trying to do? People are trying to wage a war against the country. National security is also in question. And this is the reason that we need data protection in all the countries. We need a data protection regime. And that is the reason that we have this kind of legislation. So this particular bill talks about data storage, the storage of personal data at specific places. Sensitive data have to be maintained, and that one copy has to be maintained in our country. Critically personal data to be notified, what is that data, is to be stored in India and cannot be transferred outside. Only in cases of emergency can it be transferred outside the country. Example, COVID emergency. Right? There will be penalties in case there will be violations. The social media organizations, they will not be social media organizations. For example, Facebook will not be treated as data intermediaries. They will not be treated as data intermediaries. They will be also considered as owners, so that if there is some violation, they are held accountable. Not only that, if there is a breach in their data, they must inform the authorities within 72 hours. Right? Right. So because of all this, there has been an impending issue of having a legislation on the same, right? Then there have to be data audits which have to be done, right? Data audits. So what kind of data are you storing? Is it important for you? You have to follow a set of principles for each and every private organization storing data. Are they asking for data more than required, and are they processing it, or are they actually forgetting the data after its usage? See, there is a principle of usage of data. So data principle rights, right? Right to erasure has been added for data that is no longer necessary. If McDonald's that does not need my address, it must delete that address. So if the data is not required, it must delete it. For many procedures like this, data audit is also carried out. In case there is a default found, there will be penalty of the global turnover of that company. A specific component of this will be charged as fine. Now this is only a recommendation of the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Once the bill gets passed, then we will understand what is the final thing, but it could remain same as well. So right now we should only understand the principles on which it is working, right? Not the figures exactly, right? Right? All the data companies will have to have a data protection officer, right? And this has to be a very high ranked officer in the organization, right? Earlier they could assign anybody, but now they will have to assign a C-level officer here. I will explain that in a very short time, right? So there should be, it has recommended to expand the right to be forgotten for processing, as well as which was previously limited to only disclosure. So right to be forgotten also must be a part of data protection, right? So some of the recommendations are including the non-personal data that I mentioned. Non-personal data that is for a group, anonymous data which does not identify the individual but the group as well. That also is included in this renewed recommendation, right? Transition period, the period in which this execution of data protection bill it will happen, that also has been mentioned, right? Social media liability, as I mentioned, the social media companies will not be treated as intermediaries. They will be treated as publishers, and therefore be held liable for the content that they host, right? This was also the part where the government was trying to regulate the social media companies, right? In the beginning of year, government passed regulation talking about regulation of social media companies, about the digital online medium and OTTs. So one of them was this social media companies as well, right? Penalties, as I mentioned, timely alert, they must inform within 72 hours. These are recommendations. And one clause because of which there are so many issues getting created are the powers of the government. The committee says that the government will have power to ensure that it gets data of the persons as well when it needs, only during specific times. This is like an asterisk mark, terms and conditions apply. When you have given a whole set of bill, at the end you put this asterisk mark and you utilize for discretionary purposes. So this is only, a concern that has been raised by the society, right? So some of the challenges while implementing a bill like this is the ambit of this kind of data, right? The powers of government. If the government is able to utilize certain specific kind of data, then this is under question, right? Then establishment of the authority itself, data protection authority, if it is established, if its members or it's the people who are at the helm, if they are established through the central government itself or the government itself, then the government is controlling the data protection authority, right? It is in control of that authority. So this goes against the principle of autonomy of data of the people. The government indirectly will own this. This is another issue, right? Then another issue that relates to data is that of the obligation to appoint the data protection officers, right? These officers now must be the C ranked officers, CXO positions, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Technical Officer, Chief Academic Officer, Chief Operating COO, C-level officers. They should be at this level. So another issue here, right? So these are certain of the issues. Children's personal data. This is another issue which has to be handled. See, children data is regulated by the authority itself, the same authority which is data company, which is taking the data company. But this is mediated through parents. Under the age of 18, it is mediated through parents in our country. But many countries have this option where the child is 13 years or 16 years, they have the different kind of content where they can authorize, the children themselves can authorize. So what should be the regime in India? That is something that is of concern. So right now it has been put as 18 only. So this is the update from here because, there are different ages when children grow mentally and emotionally. So that is why should we have a smaller age distinction just like OTT platforms now have, or should we have 18 below and 18 and above? These are the kind of issues that the data protection bill JPC recommendations is facing, right? The time now is ripe to have a data protection bill. It has been quite a lot of time. 2017 the judgment was given and 4 years since then we have not executed this particular bill. Not only that, not only the execution of the bill, look, there will be time. It will take 12 months to 24 months for it to get executed also, because data centers will have to be formed, data localization has to happen, principles of audit also has to come up. There are so many things which the government and the data protection authority has to work upon. And right now we are only at the stage of finalization of the bill. So this new data protection bill that we are talking of, what did we speak of? To begin with, we spoke of 4 principles of data protection. Very important principles, not mentioned anywhere, but mentioned here in the beginning. You can talk about these principles whenever you talk about data security anywhere around the world, right? So these are very important keywords to be used. This is one. We studied the amount of data that is getting created, data about that data created, and the difference between data information, personal data, critical personal data, and sensitive personal data, right? We also understood what are the recommendations of JPC, that is having data protection authority, the 72-hour norm, the media, the social media companies, that they are not treated as intermediaries. We studied quite a bit, 7-8 points regarding the data protection bill recommendations from JPC. We also have understood what are the issues related to it, right? For example, the data protection authority coming under the ambit of government, right? What about the small children? What about the time duration in which it will flow, right? So we studied 3 or 4 of issues that are with the bill, and we also understand what is the significance of data, right? Individual data, autonomy, privacy, security, and the need for data security. This is the most important aspect. The need for data security. Data security is not only individual in nature, also national security is of concern. So when we studied 7-8 dimensions of data security, a question can be put up to you. The question could be, discuss the need for an effective data protection regime in India. How effective can the Data Protection Bill 2021 be in achieving this endeavor? See, the first part is the need for a regime in India and how effective can this bill be, right? So when you discuss this, you have to talk about the positive aspects, right? In 60% of the answer, 40% of the answer could be dedicated to the first segment. The 60% later could be dedicated to the issues and the positives of this bill. 60%, in which you could dedicate maybe 2/3 to the good points and 1/3 to the issues, right? If you do not find space enough, then you could start writing in points for the issues that are there in the bill. This is how you will be able to complete this answer in 2 pages, right? But 2 pages, standard pages, you can also get into demonstrating some of the aspects of this answer. If you like this initiative, do share some love on us through likes, comments and shares. And today is Thursday. We will see you again tomorrow evening for the current affairs and feature news discussion. Let me see if there are people who are asking questions here. If there are questions, do share. Hello Ravi, hello Manvendra. Babani says do share some love and do share some love. All right. So, sir, should we focus on the feature news or wait for the act to be passed? There are elements of this featured news which are very important. For example, when I mentioned about the 4 data principles, this is beyond, this will be a sin if you do not remember those 4 keywords, right? Right? The principle of minimal data usage, right? So there are 4 principles that I spoke of. They are important. Not only that, when you talk of those elements of data protection, those elements are common in European Union as well. Many of those components are common. So I will suggest that you must know those individual components, not the words, not the data, but the phrases. They must be known to you, right? The concerns are very similar. So when you try to create a summary of this particular featured news, this should be coming up in 1/5 of a page. 1/5 of a page. If you do not know how, tomorrow I will show that to you. I will actually write down the summary, what I understand is a small summary, and I will present it to you, right? So that you understand, should you wait for the final bill to get released, or should you also note down the keywords from here? I would say note down the keywords. The bill finally would be could not be a greater change from what this is, right? This is Joint Parliamentary Committee recommendations. This is one of the authorities, one of the very critical authorities in the parliament, where opposition, government, all the particular parties, they meet and they form this, right? So who will be opposing this? Only civil society, but largely this bill is on the right track, right? They've also learned from the best of the countries to be able to get to this. So those themes must be known to you, right? So with this, I come to the conclusion of this conversation. Thank you. Good night, Amlan. Good night, Babani. Good night, Hima. Good night, Netra. Good night, Ravi. Good night, Ashish. All right. So thank you for this conversation and discussion. I will see you guys tomorrow evening. And till then, take care and enjoy your night. Good night. Yes, JPC is an ad hoc body formed for only important discussions. Good night.